DJ AM gets paid $20,000 to spin Lindsay Lohan's 21st birthday. And I was like, how does a guy get paid $20K? Brownies Lemonade started with a lot of hip-hop focused acts and a lot of like local DJs. And it was really cool because we all like mutually had a lot of like DJ friends who like from college or from childhood who were like pretty successful. Even if you look at the social media, even if you look at the videos, it really, you have to be there in person, you know? And trying to encapsulate that is always going to be really hard. Like looking at the Instagram, it looks crazy. Skrillex is one of the first people that started wearing like our golf cap.
Oh.
And that kind of like exploded. There's a Buddhist monk there and he was showing us around, and this guy was just so cool. And he was like telling us, he's like, oh, by the way, like I was at the club last night, like I saw the show. But today I'm in my monk's robes, just chilling. It was like, wow, okay.
Hi, this is Lauren Engel of Sidewalk. I'm here with Chad of Brownies and Lemonade.
Hey, what's up,
and
guys?
a bunch of other things.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So you were born in California, or?
Yeah, I was born in Phoenix, but my parents back in that day and age, they had 2 houses. I happened to come early, unexpectedly early while they were in Phoenix, so I was born there. Mm-hmm. But I've lived in LA my entire life, so.
What brought them out here?
Well, my parents, my mom is of Japanese descent. She's from the Bay Area, and my dad is from Boston. He was an actor, and
oh wow!
So they were both artists, and they moved out to LA.
Yeah, well, then you had like a creative upbringing then.
Yeah, I mean, they were pretty supportive of like whatever I did, whether it be sports that I sucked at, or I pretty much like had a creative, family that was very supportive from the get-go. So that was like one of the, I guess, advantages of growing up in that environment. My dad was a pretty famous actor.
Oh, really?
So yeah, that was...
People are gonna Google him.
Oh God, sorry. Just gotta throw that away. You gotta recycle. That's like a very important thing. I was holding that can in my pocket this whole time. So yeah, well, my dad was on Star Trek. That was his claim to fame.
What's his first name?
Sean Kenny, S-E-A-N.
You guys are gonna find out in the comments.
Crippled Captain Pike in the original series. But yeah, I mean, like, it was cool coming from, like, a background of artists. My parents kind of just understood, like, what it takes to kind of make it in the entertainment industry out here. So I don't think that was ever something I was really fazed by. Just because, like, when you just grow up around a lot of people who, a lot of friends of mine, their parents were successful and had various jobs in the film industry and music industry, you just kind of are conditioned to understand it a little bit more. So I've always been kind of fortunate about that,
What kind of music were they playing in the house when you were growing up?
Well, my dad is like really into music. That's like probably his biggest thing that he likes to do to this day. And he would always have like tapes, and they bought me a Walkman when I was 4. So we listened to the Beatles is like a very important part. But also like my dad really likes like 70s California rock, like the Eagles and Jackson Brown, and then obviously like Stevie Wonder and a lot of like soul Motown stuff. So I had a pretty diverse musical upbringing. My mom, she likes Andrew Lloyd Webber and like the Phantom of the Opera and like Cliff Richard and John Tesh. She just likes whatever. They like Bruno Mars. That's one thing they can both get behind. So.
Oh, they must be happy at the Grammy then.
Yeah. So they're all about him.
How did you find music initially, like way back?
Yeah, I mean, I always feel like music is tied to your identity. So like when I was in high school, middle school, I was just really just like kind of a fan of music, like hip hop, and we used to, on the lunch tables, we used to like bang out like different Neptunes beats, the grinding beat, and just always been interested in music. When I was in high school, though, I definitely got more into like indie rock and underground rap, and kind of did a little bit more homework on the history of music. And then like I started getting into like DJing, I guess. I saw this like episode of this VH1 show called The Fabulous Life. It was really fucking lame. Like it's basically Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous for like the mid 2000s. And they were talking about DJ AM, and they're like, DJ AM gets paid $20,000 to spin Lindsay Lohan's 21st birthday. And I was like, how does a guy get paid $20K to DJ for a few hours? Because like at that point in time it was like 2006, and I really only knew about like bar mitzvah DJs, you know, or like the guys that came to prom and just like slammed down their CD machine, and you would go like put in requests. Those are the only DJs I really knew about. So like raves were kind of lame back in high school. The kids that went to raves are kind of like, they would wear glow sticks to school and stuff and like candy, and they're kind of into computers, and you know, it's always this kind of like, and people in high school are so judgmental. So I was like, oh, I can't be into like that. They listen to Bass Hunter and Armin van Buuren, and that's lame. So I never really got into that stuff. But when I saw DJ AM do his thing, I downloaded the Lindsay Lohan mix that he made, and it was just like this amazing creativity that he had. He could like craft kind of like almost like a song out of like 5 songs, but he was like doing it all live. So that was one of my earliest influences. And my friend Brian got me really into DJing on like vinyl, and we started playing these shows. We were just like way out of our league, but we were doing them anyway. And
so during high school?
Yeah, that's like when I first started. I remember a lot of like weird gigs at that point in time. I didn't really actually first start getting paid to DJ until I was in college, but you know, like high school kids, rich high school kids that I was around, like they'd have a party in their dad's backyard, and someone had like a setup, and you know, we're all terrible. The transitions are awful, but everyone thought those kids were like rock stars because it was like this new thing that was happening, that you would be a DJ. Like it was so random, you know? Like yeah. So it was way before this thing had become kind of mainstream. So it's just interesting like to think about how in its infancy it was in America, you know, because when I bought my DJ setup, it was like $3,000 to $4,000. Like that's a huge investment to make. You had to buy 2 turntables, a mixer, a laptop, and a Serato box. And that's just like a base level thing. You also have to get like a coffin, you have to get the needles, you have to get the control vinyls. So I spent like $4,000 of my graduation money, and like people chipped in, and I got all my DJ equipment. But it's like, if you don't ever use that towards anything and you're just in your bedroom, you know, that's quite a lot of money to just throw into a hobby. So. And
then so you went to UCLA, and then how did you start getting like actual gigs initially?
Well, yeah, I mean, like that was a turning point. Is like the summer before I went to UCLA in 2007. I saw Daft Punk, and I saw Justice a lot, and a lot of like the new wave electronic scene, which like Steve Aoki and Dim Mak and A-Track and Fool's Gold and the Ed Banger crew were like bringing to LA. So that was like a huge explosion of DJ culture in Los Angeles. Oh, damn, Quarters?
Yeah.
Okay, this place is poppin'. It has like bakjang. That place has
I've
the
heard
best.
of these places, but I've been to Quarters.
Quarters is like, you know, it's the one that people will know about. White people know that one. that place, bakjang, though, is pretty tight. Really good spicy pork. So I don't know if that was part of the review. Yeah, we just threw that in there. I don't work for them, I promise. I can't even pronounce the name.
Oh my god.
But yeah, so well, I mean, I had like Tractor on my laptop, so when I was in class, like I was like a theater major, so like in between classes, I'd be like, I think this sounds like the plot to the movie Pitch Perfect.
Oh my god, yeah.
Wasn't she like she's like a singer who like, anyway. It's very much like my college. I'm not making this up. This actually happened. So I was just like playing. I was like mixing live in between classes, like a total douchebag. And people were like, "Yo, this is sick, dude. You should come play at my frat." And I was like, "All right." So then I booked like my first DJ gig at a frat, like within a few weeks of being in school. And so yeah, I was able to I was one of the only people on campus who had my own like equipment and all my own stuff, so I can go into these frats, go into these like private parties and stuff, and just get cash and spin for like 5 hours. So that kind of like taught me how to be a really good DJ, is because you have to read a crowd, you have to keep it going for 5 hours. There's like ebbs and flows. So that was kind of like the trenches of DJing.
Yeah, and you're really influenced by Avalon, right?
Yes, yeah. So Avalon used to be like still is to this day by people who are in the know from that era, but you know, widely considered like the mecca of electronic music in LA for a while. You know, they've been doing it for well over 10 years, and I still pack out the show like every Friday, which is like super impressive for longevity's sake. But yeah, dude, like they used to have a side lounge there called the Honey Lounge. There's a lot of different names they had for it. It's now the Pioneer Lounge. They totally remodeled the area, but if you could get a DJ gig there, that was like, your rite of passage.
Yeah.
And then if you can move up and then eventually make it to main stage, it was like, oh, you made it. Like, you're famous now. So yeah, that was like a very important part of my upbringing for sure. Being able to go there because it was like 19 and up. So it wasn't like, you know, a traditional nightclub, which I felt like in LA, there's a lot of politics. And I did my fair share of promoting like at these clubs because it's just part of the deal. You have to work your way up the ladder. But yeah, but one thing about Avalon, I will say, is that we did do a Brownies Lemonade show there in 2015, and I finally got to DJ on the main stage. And honestly, like, that was like, it was like this moment, like, where I was like, wow.
Single tear.
You know, okay, and then when it was over, I was like, okay, it's over. So. But like, you know, I think there's a lot of like tiers and sort of like milestones that you can accomplish in Los Angeles, and you know, that was one of the ones recently that was pretty big for me.
And then what happened after you graduated? Like, what got you your foot in the door initially and to do more stuff?
Yeah, I mean, when I graduated college, it was kind of pretty open-ended, like what I was gonna do, because I had a theater degree and I just enjoyed music. So I think it's hard for anyone who like took DJ really seriously and promoted parties and stuff when they're in college, like, to make that transition afterwards when they're trying to turn it into a career. So I guess my advice that I tell everyone who's watching this is that you kind of have to do everything. Like, you have to try a lot of different things in music, because I think that like when you start out, like I initially was just like, oh, I'm just gonna be a famous DJ. That's all I want to do. It's gonna produce bangers and tour and all that stuff. But I started to realize that I don't think producing was my strong suit. I realized I was kind of better at management and like putting together a party. So, but I did like 5 different things and I kind of came to that conclusion. So yeah, like when I got out of college, I just started like a record label called Shifty Rhythms, which I still work with, and we were working on this music festival called Coachella, which was a DIY music festival that I was involved with for 6-7 years, and then Brownies and Lemonade, and I met those guys at a party like a few months after I graduated, and they had just started it around that time as well.
What year was this?
This was December 2011. But it was cool. Like, we met through mutual friends, and we were all like events promoters and producers, so we're just all on the same page, and those guys were just instantly become like some of my closest friends. So
how long was Brownies and Lemonade until you joined? Like, how long have they been around before you joined?
So they started actually a long time ago unofficially. Jose and Kush, who founded Brownies and Lemonade, they actually went to UCLA as well, but they graduated the year before I enrolled, so it was kind of like what they were doing is like 4 years before I started was like exactly the same thing. Like, they were throwing house parties and
yeah. I was like, Brownies and Lemonade is
no, but they started the party when they were in college. They started throwing house parties, and like Brownies and Lemonade was kind of always like this name that they kind of had for like the diversity of like their group and like the people that like come to the shows, and it's just always like a mishmash of things, because we all like, you know, hip hop, but we also like dance music, but we also like, you know, it's like very diverse. So that name kind of just stuck on, and Brownies Lemonade has gone through like a variety of like changes, but really they started doing like official parties like more in like 2011, 12 into now, you know. So it's hard to like pinpoint when exactly it started.
Yeah.
But I think more recently, I always feel like everything from like 2013 on is probably where you can officially say that.
So how big were they? Like, what kind of names were they booking when you were joining?
Well, Brownies Lemonade started with a lot of hip-hop focused acts and a lot of like local DJs. And it was really cool because we all like mutually had a lot of like DJ friends who like from college or from childhood who were like pretty successful. So we do parties with like Gladiator, Vendetta, some of the earlier acts that they booked long time ago, like Capital Cities, Ryan Hemsworth. So it was always like a cool variety. You would have that kind of stuff, but then you have like live hip hop, and so that was kind of like how we operated for a while. But then we started to transition more into like the SoundCloud world and like the more DJ club friendly kind of stuff, because it was just easier for us with our resources to kind of book out that kind of stuff. And and put together a cool lineup that like no one was really doing. So that's when we started flying people out and stuff.
Yeah.
To come to the Lash, which is where we first started doing those kinds of shows. This party called Double Cross. If any of you guys know about that one, one of our original events. I mean, there's a lot of diversity to like the events that we've done, so it's interesting to think about it like in a linear chronology, because I just think about it all as just like the different kind of sides of like our personalities, you know.
Yeah.
We have like a daytime hip hop party called Camp Trill. We've been doing that for a very long time, and I mean, I think that's like our best event. It's like our bread and butter, and we really like daytime parties. That's like our favorite thing. Like daytime parties, music everyone knows, but we all also understand that like a lot of our audience really likes nighttime clubs and, you know, like high energy music, and so we try to like kind of like cater to all sides of like our fan base and our like our own taste too. I mean, I like going out at night too. So
when it was like when you first joined on, what was the scene like, and was it competitive for you and to find your own uniqueness? Yeah,
I mean, man, I think the scene is always competitive. It doesn't matter really about how many people do it, how many people you're competing against. It's really the wealth of ideas that are being exchanged. So I would actually say that people back then were kind of a little bit more creative than some of the other people now, because now I think a lot of people look at formulas or like proven success models to like how they start their brand or how they start their music career or their venture. And I just remember like 4 or 5 years ago, people were taking a lot more risks, and that was pretty cool, because there were some great ideas, and you know, like some people that don't throw events anymore, but you know, mad respect for like so many people. But yeah, I mean, the scene was competitive for sure. I mean, like for instance, like booking artists has always been difficult, especially if they're with an agency. So, you know, we were just trying to figure out how do we get people to these parties to get excited about the people who are going to perform. And one of the things that we were able to kind of do around 2013, 14 is we started to kind of book a lot of people from SoundCloud that hadn't performed in LA yet, and that were like kind of unproven up and coming acts from their various, you know, places around the world. So, you know, some of the earlier acts we booked were like
Moving Castle,
which was probably the biggest one for us. It was a watershed moment. But then like, yeah, Jai Wolf and Andy Callie and Louis a Child and Sean Wasabi. And, you know, it's just really cool to just take a step back like 3 years later and just realize that there was like this melting pot of talent that we had kind of put together. And all of those people are like very successful now in their like own individual paths, you know, so.
How are you able to figure out branding, like initially, even from like your Twitter personality, like Brownies Twitter to I guess merch stuff?
Well,
but for social media.
Yeah, well, I think that a lot of it kind of happened, you know, as we continue to kind of figure out like what it is we were doing. You know, we used to throw parties in like warehouses and galleries, and so I think for the most part, our team has been always really good about making sure that the voice speaks to like our fan base kind of like on their level, or like we're kind of all involved in it, you know. And I think we never really wanted to be like a super corporate, you know, news professional Twitter or whatever. And you know, the thing is that like I always try to tell people like it's really hard to grasp like what we do. Even if you look at the social media, even if you look at the videos, it really, you have to be there in person, you know? And trying to encapsulate that is always going to be really hard. Like, looking at the Instagram, it looks crazy, but, you know, like, most of my friends from, like, high school and college, like, they've never gone to a BNL show. Like,
yeah.
They're too old. You know, they have arthritis. They might get hurt.
Oh, my God.
But, no, and then that's the thing is that, like, they look at what you're doing and they think, wow, it looks crazy, you guys are killing it. And I'm just always like, man, you should just come through. Like, you might not like it, you might think we suck. Like, but I think we try to paint that picture through social media, because that's the gateway to so many people. I think in this day and age is like making sure that it reflects kind of the essence of what you're doing. So I think our team does a pretty good job of that.
How did you decide to start merch?
Well, that was actually something we've always been doing. We just never really sold it. So we've always had hats, and like I have like snapbacks and like hats from like way back in the day, that our team was like creating, and they were like super cool. Except, you know, when you're repping something that no one knows about, they'll be like, oh, like whatever. But you know, we just always been doing that, and it wasn't until I think Skrillex is one of the first people that started wearing like our golf cap, and that kind of like exploded, and then we were like, oh, like people kind of like want this stuff, you know. It just happened pretty organically. I don't think it was. I mean, we definitely always try to. We always like are cognizant of things that we could do that are cool, but it definitely was never like a business thing that we thought about. It was. We just thought the merch looked cool. It was just like, we want to wear our stuff.
So what's your role, and what's like Kush's role, and like how do you split responsibilities?
Well, we have a team of 7 core people who we all have like different personalities and different responsibilities and roles. And Kush is just really like our main man, and he just really handles like a lot of you know, the stuff behind the scenes. But we all kind of like chip in and have, you know, input. We have team meetings pretty frequently and just kind of go over a lot of you know, what's on the agenda. Yeah. And so, you know, we've been doing that for quite a while, and we have a really good flow, which is why I mean, I could say that we've experienced some success is because we all have like very defined lanes. So it's like me, Kush, Jose, Eli, Dan, Evan, and Ben. So that's like our core team, and those are all like my best friends, you know, like, because when you work in music, it's like really hard. People start to drop off in your life. Like people are busy doing their own things. They don't want to come to the club on the weekends, and that's when we're working, you know. So it's just been really cool that I get to travel and like work with like people who I actually enjoy and who are like my good friends, you know, because I think that's always like a rough part of it is like you start to kind of like work starts to become the primary focus. Even though like what we do is kind of like fun and it's recreation, and eventually if you try to turn it into your career, it has to become work, you know. So, but we try to keep it fun. Yeah, we crack jokes a lot, like too much. I do A&R in like my day job, so like a lot of like talent scouting, a lot of helping curate lineups, and at the shows I do artist relations. So just helping people get sorted, taking care of their hospitality, just making people feel comfortable with like being a part of our show. And I think that one of the things that all of our teammates are really good at doing is making any of the artists, whether they be like 17-year-old kid doing his first show ever in LA to someone like Skrillex, you know, everyone is really good at making everyone feel, you know, welcome and invited and comfortable. And, you know, that's kind of like where I think, where we've been able to make an impact is that people want to be part of that experience and just come hang out. And so, but that's probably like my primary thing is just making sure like everyone's taken care of, and I have a lot of great relationships with these artists, so it's just pretty cool. I just respect all of them, you know.
How did Alza and Skrillex happen in Japan?
Well, you know, Sonny had been living there for a few months, and he was just, you know, he just loves and respects the culture, which is, as someone who's Japanese American, like I just think that's so awesome. Yeah. Because there's a lot of people who really love Japanese culture, but I think they kind of like sometimes appropriate it for their own like superficial benefit, and like that's fine. Like I understand how, you know, things are. Like no one really has, like culture is so open-ended these days, but like Sonny just loves the Japanese culture, and everyone there just like they just think he's a god. You know, just love him. But he was hanging out there for a while, and they were doing like an Auzla merch. They were doing like an Auzla merch line, and they were releasing it in Japan, and they wanted to throw some after parties. And so we've had a pretty good experience working with Auzla on the event side of things. So they invited us out. Kind of happened on a whim. Put it together like, you know, in a short amount of time, and then we went to Japan, and that was like probably the coolest experience of my life. Yeah. Yeah, it was great. It was always been like my dream to go to Japan. So to like go in that capacity, it was like, oh wow, yeah. This is not normal. I don't think anyone is gonna get this kind of we went to this place called Nanzetto, and it's like this very very beautiful like holy Buddhist site, and it's a temple, and there's a Buddhist monk there, and he was showing us around, and this guy was just so cool, and he was like telling us, he's like, oh, by the way, like I was at the club last night, like I saw the show, but today I'm in my monk's robes, I'm just chilling. It was like, wow, okay. So this guy is the coolest dude ever.
Yeah.
So like they showed us around this temple, and we got a chance to go into the emperor's like 500-year-old throne room, which is like it's not really available to the public to see.
Yeah.
And like that was just the kind of like cool thing about being with that group of people, is that we had that opportunity to see that, and I was just in there. I'm like, yo, like how did this happen? Like, we were just doing parties in warehouses a few years ago, and now I'm in like the emperor's throne room. Like, wow, like this is pretty cool. And like every now and then, like I have those moments where I just like take a step back and just think like, dude, I'm just so fortunate, you know, to be in this situation, you know, and I definitely never take it for granted. Like it's really cool to have that experience, you know. So
how do you decide like which festivals you want to be at and like saying no to certain things now that you have the ability to people want you to do their stuff?
Yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to if it makes sense for us at the time, you know. Sometimes you know, we get offers to like go to a city that we've never been in before, and you know, sometimes we're not entirely sure if like we could bring the proper BNL experience to them and stuff. And it's always like, you know, weighing those kinds of things to make sure that like every time that we do something that we're able to bring like the best experience possible. So yeah, that's tough, is because, you know, when we do shows and stuff, everyone sees the caliber of the artists that we work with. So I think they automatically assume that like at every show, you know, we're going to be able to kind of provide that same experience. So we want to make sure that we can.
Yeah.
So a lot of times it just comes down to that. It's very objective, more so than like our personal feelings. We love to do every show, you know.
Do you ever feel like you're pigeonholed into the SoundCloud EDM scene now?
I mean, yes and no. I feel like people, like, it's like this weird double-edged sword and this dichotomy where people, like, their music taste within electronic music is so much more vast than it's ever been. Like back in the day, like in 2008, 2009, like you could pretty much say that there was like a set EDM culture and like maybe some subcultures in America. But now it's like, there's like 5 different types of house. Like within LA alone, you have like your techno snobs, you got your tech house people, you got your deep house people. And then so like within electronic music, there's just so much variety. But I think like bass and trap music and SoundCloud, like it has a very distinct vibe. So because we've contributed to a lot of those people's careers, I think we're obviously going to get associated with them. You'll see that there's a lot more variety than just, you know, SoundCloud oriented stuff, and you know, we're trying to book more live acts, and you know, there's so many examples of artists that we've helped work with that like kind of fell outside of that sphere, and sometimes we try to take risks and book like super, you know, off. Wow, that was like a big, there was a huge palm tree frond that just fell down. Wow. We just try to mix it up a little bit too, because we're aware that we don't want to just like do the same thing over and over again. No one likes that. I don't like that. You know, like I don't want to go and hear the same set over and over again, you know. But I mean, I think that's kind of like EDM as a whole too. I don't think, or electronic music or anything within that realm, like there's going to be so much overlap. I don't think anyone can really say that, you know, one particular field is like the purest or the truest, you know. So it's all like subjective that way.
What is the goal now? Is it just to grow like internationally?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely one of the things we'd like to do. You know, we try to take things like kind of 1 week at a time these days, because there is a lot to kind of micromanage and just be aware of. And I just want to make sure that like we're always like constantly doing like our best work. But yeah, definitely going international is something that requires a lot of work, but would be really cool. Like I got a chance to go to Australia with Alison Wonderland for like 16 days.
Huge.
Yeah, and that was really cool. And like living there for almost, you know, more than half a month was like, I really immersed myself in the culture, but also takes a lot out of you. Like there's a lot that's involved in like trying to execute an international tour or do stuff along those lines, because there is a cultural divide. There's a lot of differences. Australia, not as much, because we're very like on the same level as them, like as Americans and Australians, and it was just super easy to get along with everyone. And like I have family there, and it was easy, you know. But yeah, like I don't even know. Like, do people like out there even really know about BNL? I have no idea. You know what? Actually, there was this clip of Valentino Khan playing in London the other day, and my friend sent me a snap, and there was some kid in the crowd, and he was like, he held up his iPhone, and on it he had written B&L for life, like
What?
in like this club in London. So there's at least one guy there.
One guy.
There's at least one guy. If you're watching this guy, we'll come out there.
Please comment.
If you don't show up, then it's gonna be a sham. That is like false. He's not for life.
Oh my god. What kind of advice do you have for people who want to get into the event space?
I mean, the common thing is don't. I mean, everyone always says that, but I think that you have to have like a very realistic approach. You know, like I was able to like continue to do events. Mind you, I had been doing events for like 7 or 8 years before like we started to kind of make moves. So like there's a lot of bad events. You just have to have really thick skin. You can't think that any one event is going to kind of dictate your career, you know, because the thing is as soon as you throw a bad event, all right, well that event's over. So it's now time to focus on the next one. Like you can't let it control, you know, your enjoyment or your outlook. And then on the flip side, like if an event is really great and it's awesome, you can't revel in that too long because people are going to, okay, so what's the next thing? Like how are we going to take advantage of this like really cool momentum we have? And so, I mean, my advice is definitely set realistic expectations, know that it's going to take a while, and definitely take risks as the most important thing. Do not follow other people's models to a T. Take examples of things that you like from those things, but definitely create something unique that, you know, and that a lot of people aren't doing, because those are the things that people are going to be looking for. You know, I get people who contact me and they've done like a Brownies Lemonade tribute party, and that's really cool. And I think that the next step from that is kind of just eliminate that idea if you want to keep doing this, and just do something like with some of the ideas from that party in mind, and just do something completely different. Because I just think that having ownership over something that you kind of were able to do on your own is always going to be the most rewarding thing, you know. But I think tribute parties and like all these things are important. Like I've been involved with like 7 parties before I got to where I was, you know, so you have to always be kind of open to trying new things. And you know, like one of the things I do is Drake party, and I've been doing that for like 4 years now, and we just play Drake, and like we've just been doing that forever. Like it started kind of on a whim. We were just like they didn't have like like music at this party one time. And someone's like, yo, I got a flash drive, but all I have is only Drake. I'm like, all right, just play it. And then it just like went off. People were going crazy, and they're like, oh, should we just throw like a Drake party? And then ever since then, like we've done parties and like 1,400 people show up just to dance to Drake all night. But you know, like that was just something that just happened organically, and it was just kind of fresh. And that's what I guess I'm getting at, is just like make sure you just kind of just like take risks. It comes organically. You just have fun. It'll make it way more enjoyable down the road, you know?
Yeah. What would you say have been the biggest challenges so far?
I think the biggest challenge for me personally, like recently, because, you know, obviously the biggest challenges in the last couple of years were like living in my parents' house and not having money, and like trying to figure out what I was doing with my life, which I think anyone in their 20s is going to go through. But more recently, now that like there's a little bit more work, I'm on my own and stuff, like one of the things that I think is a challenge is balancing like the touring with like a day job and like working at home, or like, you know, balancing your time management. And really what it comes down to is having that time for yourself, where like you can be like really at peace. You're not looking at social media, do something like exercise or something that kind of, you know, gets you out of like the craziness a little bit. Definitely something that I've been very focused on, because I understand that like in music, and it's very true, like mental health is like a very you know, prevalent subject for everyone. And so for me personally, like I just realized like, yeah, I just need to be aware of that, and just don't get too wrapped up in whatever, and be like always aware of how I'm feeling. So
Yeah.
that's like more on a serious note.
Yeah.
Other challenges obviously is just like, you know, always just kind of coming up with new ideas. What do I want to do next? What am I feeling? Yeah, but you know, those things kind of just come with the territory, and you just take it one day at a time. But yeah, I mean, we definitely have some cool things coming up pretty soon, before we run out of time. Just like let you know.
Sure.
We have Coachella coming up this weekend, which is gonna be really cool. We're doing a Brownies Lemonade All-Star set in the Heineken House, and we're gonna be doing that both weekends. So that should be cool. I'm gonna be like our resident DJs and a bunch of homies coming through. So if anyone's there, Coachella this weekend, definitely check that out. And then after weekend 1 and after weekend 2, on consecutive Wednesdays, we're gonna be doing these big like LA parties around the time of Coachella, and that's gonna be at Union. So we're really putting like a lot of effort into that. And the only reason why I plugged that is because that's coming up soon, and I just wanted to make sure that you definitely have to come because you never come out to shows. And
exposed.
And obviously, like, we just want our fans to know too, like, we're really excited about these shows. We're gonna be doing 2 rooms, and there's gonna be like a lot of cool like surprises. It's gonna be a little different than our bread and butter Union shows, which we're known for. So, so that's definitely gonna be something to look forward to.
See.
I'm always like wrapped up in like this week, so like, that's what's coming up.
Last question: what do you want to be remembered for?
Oh man, yeah, that's always hard. I always want to be remembered for doing it the right way, you know, and just making sure that I guess that I always kind of operated the same way and never really changed who I was by whether it was extremely successful or, you know, I was a complete failure. You know, just at least that I was always pretty even. Because the thing is that, you know, when I was like, when we started throwing parties, like I remember days, like, you know, you're going to have like plenty of these nights where like 50 people would show up throughout the whole day. And I thought there was going to be like a couple hundred. And I remember like that feeling of like failure or like just like low, like, like it didn't turn out the way you want it to. And it's like, it's a terrible feeling when you throw events. And I always feel bad because then you're like, oh man, I got to be here for 5 hours. Like, I just don't want anyone to look at me. But I would just like always try to own up to it, and I'd go up to everyone and I would just be like, hey guys, thanks so much for coming. I think more people are coming soon. But yo, let me get you a drink. And you know, and like I was just always so like cared so much about people's enjoyment, you know, and all of the people I throw parties with feel the same way. And now when there's like 500 people coming to a party or something, 1,000 people, like every single person's opinion matters just the same. So if someone didn't have a good time out of the 1,000, I mean, that's something that affects me. Like, it makes me feel like, okay, how do we like make sure that that doesn't happen again? Or how do we make that person's next, you know, experience enjoyable? So you can't get too caught up in that, but definitely I always want to be like even throughout and just make sure that, you know, I wasn't a certain way back then and now I'm like a different way this.
Yeah.
But,
I love that. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm surprised, like, you know, we should have just gone into some of these spots, like that pawn shop over there, or California Donuts right here.
Oh yeah.
We'll do that off camera.
Oh my God.